Hi everyone, it's me. Today I would like to talk to you about a conspiracy type of rumor slash story that was going around for years that I recently came to realize wasn't true, and that a lot of people, made money off of a story that was incorrect, and they probably did that, for the profit of themselves. So, we're going to talk today about Dr. Ning Li, who was an anti gravity scientist. If you look her up, if you search Dr. Ning Li anti gravity, what will come up is it says Dr. Ning Li was a Chinese American scientist known for her research in anti gravity, claiming to have developed a method to produce anti gravity effects through rotating ions and high temperature superconductors. Her work in the 1990s suggested that a strong gravitomagnetic field could neutralize gravity, although her claims remain controversial and unverified. Now, I believe it was also in the 1990s, it was 1989, when Bob Lazar came out and talked about the work that the government was doing with anti gravity and what is it called? Darn it. ARVs. Crap, I forget. Um, Alien reproduction vehicle. There we go. Sorry about that. So, and that's what they're trying to produce, like reproduce these other vehicles that are coming from somewhere else, let's say, okay? So, anyway, they were saying that Dr. Li was kidnapped by the Chinese and taken there, that she was taken by the deep state, all kinds of crazy stuff, that she just disappeared off the face of the earth. But there was an article that came out in 2023. It was July 30th, 2023. And again, I just realized this within the past couple of weeks, but because I've been making videos and then uploading them at a later date. But yeah, it's called Uncovering the Mystery of Huntsville's Brilliant Anti-Gravity Scientists by Noah Logan. It was written in the Huntsville Business Journal, like I said, July 30th, 2023. And it says, I'll just read it to you here. So it says, Dr. Ning Li's son talks about his mom's career and legacy along with the internet's obsession with her so-called disappearance. In this line of work, it's essential that you can quickly explain to a total stranger how and why you acquired their private phone number in a way that is disarming rather than unnerving. Without this skill, the work ethic of a responsible and professional journalist can easily come across as unwanted snooping or an invasion of privacy. This is much easier for some stories than it is for others. As I waited for George Guangyu Men to answer his phone, I was still unsure of how exactly I was going to transition from introducing myself to the topic of writing a story about the disappearance of his mother, the prominent Huntsville scientist and Chinese immigrant Dr. Ning Li. This was especially tricky because George's mother was never actually a missing person, and he was unaware of the millions of people who claimed otherwise in various articles and video presentations for the last decade. However, if the if the conversation could just survive this initial strange roadblock, then it could proceed without any further strange or nonsensical questions. Well, besides the very first question that made up my list, George, did your mother happen to invent anti-gravity technology? I first learned about Dr. Ning Li from a YouTube video which I discovered a few weeks prior, titled The Scientist That Discovered Anti-Gravity Then Disappeared Completely, and it garnered more than 3 million views. Over the course of the next 22 minutes, I listened intently as the video's creator, who goes by the name of Barely Sociable, shared a story who seemed more like that of a true crime mystery thriller than something that would happen right here in Huntsville. Not only was Dr. Ning Li from Huntsville, she was also a trailblazer in the field of anti-gravity research. After migrating to America from China in 1983, Li began working at the University of Alabama Huntsville, Huntsville's Center for Space Plasma and Aeronomic Research. She became famous and somewhat controversial for a series of papers she co-authored from 1991 to 1993. In her work, Li described a practical method of producing an anti-gravity field, which had never been done before. It's always been held that because gravity is a basic force of nature, constructing an anti-gravity machine is theoretically impossible. However, Li and her co-author, Douglas Torr, theorized ways around this belief using a high-temperature superconductor, HTSD. In an HTSD, the tiny gravitational effect of each individual atom is multiplied by the billions of atoms in the disk. Using about 1 kilowatt of electricity, Li claimed her device could produce a force field that would effectively neutralize gravity above a 1-foot diameter region extending from the surface of the planet to outer space. To demonstrate their research, they invited officials from the renowned science and technology magazine Popular Mechanics to visit their laboratory in Huntsville to see their work in progress. A 12-inch disc which acted as a HTSD. Upon the disc's completion, they told the magazine a bowling ball placed anywhere above the disc will stay exactly where you left it. In the late 90s, she claimed to have created anti-gravity devices that were fully functional, and this was big news in both scientific journals and mainstream press. In 1997, Dr. Li continued to expand on her concept and conduct more experiments. She published papers describing the anomalous weight changes in objects suspected objects suspended over a rotating superconductor. To say her work, referred to as taming gravity, could change the world is an understatement. Taming gravity would drastically change the way we transportate on every level. Humans could transport the world at ease, and we could finally get our hands on those sweet hoverboards from Back to the Future. It would also transform how we power transportation and effectively end our reliance on fossil fuels. So, what became of Dr. Li? The story gets even stranger. In 1999, Li left UAH to start her own company, AC Gravity, and commercialize a device based on her theories. Her colleagues obviously believed in her work as the chair of UAH's physics department. Larry Smollett also departed the university to join her. Public records show that in 2001, the U.S. Department of Defense gave AC Gravity a grant for $448,970 to research the technology. However, these results were never published. In fact, Dr. Li never published anything again. And even though the business license for AC Gravity was updated yearly through 2018, there was no record of any further work done by the company. Li's career after 2002 is the subject of great mystery. Barely Sociable's research turned up a document showing that she gave a presentation at the 2003 MITRE conference titled Measurability of AC Gravity Fields. The MITRE Corporation manages federally funded research for several U.S. agencies. At the conference, she presented along with a Redstone Arsenal official from U.S. Army Aviation and Missile Command, meaning that her research was still being conducted up to that point. The trail on Li ends after her last documented correspondence in May 2003, when she sent a private email to colleagues claiming to have conducted an experiment in which she observed 11 kilowatts of output effect. The significance of that amount is still a mystery as well. Her absence did not go unnoticed. In 2004, journalist Tim Ventura sent an email to another scientist in the field named Eugene Podkletnov. Sorry about that. Podkletnov. With the subject line, tracking down Dr. Ning Li. In the email, Ventura writes, every 2 months I retry the Li Ning at comcast.net email address that you gave me for Dr. Ning Li. I can tell from return receipts that somebody is reading her email, but I never get a reply. Podkletnov responded, confirming her well-being and that she was still working with the Department of Defense, but was unable to talk about her work. He also told Ventura that he was unable to get a working email address or phone number for her. See, on a side note to pause, she went to work for the private sector, and she was probably given a non-disclosure agreement, so she wasn't allowed to talk about her work further than she already had, okay? As the years passed, the conversation regarding Li's whereabouts started to amplify, along with the conspiracies around it. In July of 2008, a scientist named Jack Safati provided a rather alarming update during an interview that was later posted on YouTube and included in the video from Barely Sociable. During the interview, Sarfati claims that Li was no longer working for the DoD and moved back to China to continue her work. The transcript of the interview conveys the seriousness of this accusation. This is very important from a national security and political point of view. One of the key scientists is a Chinese woman named Ning Li. She has disappeared and gone back to China, said Savati. She was working at NASA and the Redstone Arsenal, but she has disappeared for several years now. The people at the Pentagon cannot reach her anymore. She is allegedly back in China, and the Chinese are pouring money into similar experiments now. That's why our intelligence guys are very interested. The most likely people to develop the first anti-gravity propulsion technology are the Chinese. And to pause on the article again to give my own commentary, this is what a lot of people do to try to make it seem like they know something or they're in the know, like these Q and deep state people that talk about, oh, I know this and I'm an insider and I'm a whistleblower. This is the type of stuff that they make up. And this type of conspiracy or rumor that people made lots of money off, articles, videos, all of this, went around for over a decade, okay? But it wasn't true. You see how they twist the truth and they make it into their own convenient story? So to continue on. The video about Ning Li ends shortly after Sarfati's interview with no clear answer as to her career after 2002. I immediately replayed the video and started to figure out how to continue this story. Various articles had been published online in the 2 years since the YouTube video with only one update. An obituary was published on the Berry Hill Funeral Home website. Dr. Ning Li passed away on July 27th, 2021. However, her obituary revealed nothing else regarding her disappearance, quote unquote, yeah? She was 79 years old, one of the world's leading scientists in superconductivity anti-gravity. Dr. Li constructed the first 12-inch HTSD of the world in the late 90s, the obituary reads. Since Berry Hill Funeral Home is located in Huntsville, it's safe to assume the accusations of Li leaving for China or even being kidnapped were wrong. However, many readers casted doubts on the credibility of the obituary and continued to support various conspiracy theories instead. It's like they're in denial, like they want it to be true. Sorry, that was my commentary added. Just that last part. To support various conspiracy theories instead. The obituary contained the name of her son, George Wang Yu Men, along with his children. After an embarrassing amount of research, I found where George had registered an LLC within the city and a phone number associated with his business. It took a bit to work up the courage, but I was way too far down the rabbit hole to give up at this point. I gave George a call, and after getting to know each other a bit, he was gracious enough to invite me into his home and talk about his mother. George informed me that while no one has called his phone before, I wasn't the first person to contact him on the topic. He has received various letters from people in New Zealand, amongst other places, hoping to learn more about Dr. Li's research. He can't help but laugh when he recalls one time he asks his mom about her work. I asked her once, he recalled. I said, "Mom, do you need to tell me something?" She told me, "First off, you don't know anything. Second off, even if you think you might know something, forget about it." I said, "Okay, that's fine." George was vaguely aware that people were still interested in his mom, but he didn't understand just how interested people were. I played Barely Sociable's video for him and his two children in the living room, along with showing him some of the online discourse, and he was able to clarify some things people have speculated over the years. Most importantly, Dr. Li never left the DoD and never left the country to work for the Chinese government. There is one nugget of information that lines up with Sarfati's 2008 interview. George said that his mother was visited by Chinese officials on one occasion in 2008 when members of the CCP were visiting America. They did attempt to recruit her back to the country to continue her work, but Li had no interest. Li had migrated along with George in the late 80s and had no desire to leave her position. She did attempt to return for her mother's funeral after she passed away, but George said she was denied permission. "I remember that so clearly," he said. She was very upset. And to pause here on the article, I'd like to put in a little bit of my commentary. That was very cruel of China to do to her, you see. And as we're going to see in the article, it really changed her and probably hurt her heart. You know, that she was happy where she was. And China didn't like that. So in order to punish her, you see, they did not let her even go to her own mother's funeral. I thought that was extremely cruel. So I'll just continue. George also explained how he noticed a change in his mom after leaving UAH for the private sector. He says all the secrecy that comes with the job began to change her demeanor and behavior over the years. She seemed, I'm going to add in something. She seemed like a very sweet and kind and intelligent, bright lady with a beautiful soul. And it probably did, she was very happy and thought that she could make great change in the world, and she could have. She very well could have. But as we know, there's people that want to control these types of things for various reasons. They might say it is for national security because they don't want other places to have these things, because we're still at this point where we can't live in harmony and unity with each other. So I'm just assuming here that they're worried that it could be used for war technology, you see? I'm sure that's a big part of it, you know? I mean, yes, there is sinister, sneaky intentions just to keep things hidden because they're selfish. Oh, definitely. And as we're going to read on in this article, she was hit by a car in 2014. And it made me wonder if, because she was getting depressed and because she probably had a beautiful big heart, wanted to share her research with the world, was happy with the changes and great progress that it could make for us all, It got her depressed, made her feel low a little bit. Maybe carrying all of that was heavy for her. Maybe they thought she was going to be a risk, and that car accident could have been planned, okay? I'm not saying that's a fact, but I am going to throw it out there that I've thought that maybe after they got what they needed out of her, they're like, oh, well, we don't need her anymore. And made it so, even if she did decide to talk about it, she wouldn't be able to. You know what I mean? So I'll continue. Forgive me for that. I've tried not to put that in my commentary in too much. All right. So I'll read that over again. George also explained how he noticed a change in his mom after leaving UAH for the private sector. He says that all the secrecy that comes with the job began to change her demeanor and her behavior over the years. When she was at the university, she loved to publish her findings, he recalled, but after she got her top secret clearance, she wasn't allowed to share anything anymore with anyone. She became much quieter. She would return from work looking worn down and her makeup messed up. She was probably crying, you guys. It wasn't like that when she was at the university, George says. I put in my 2 cents there. So she was worn down with her makeup messed up. It wasn't like that when she worked at the university. I have filed requests through the Freedom of Information Act for the results of her 2001 grant, along with any research from her, but it was denied, along with requests from others. It's safe to say we won't be finding out the specifics of her research after 2002 for a long time. And I did try to look for some of her research. I didn't find it. P.S. But I do have some papers called EtherTech that are worth looking at. Okay. Let's see. It's immediately apparent when talking to George the admiration he still holds for his mother. My mother was very concentrated. She concentrated on one thing and only one thing at a time, he explained. She passed that down, too. She told us to find our one thing, concentrate on it with all you have, and don't feel the need to compare yourself to any other people. Just do the best you can with your passion. And I think her grandkids will learn from that. Sorry, I just need to put in my commentary. That's what's happened to me. I found my passion, and I realized that I may not be the same as others, but what my channel is about, it brings me fulfillment, joy, and passion, and great mental food. What's this? Mental nourishment. And it makes me feel very good, and I believe I agree with that. She told us to find our one thing, concentrate on it with all you have, and don't feel the need to compare yourself to any other people. Just do the best you can with your passion, and I think her grandkids will learn from that. And I've even taken inspiration from that myself, as I'm saying that right now as me, Lacey. Sorry, I'll go back to the interview. Dr. Li continued to work at Redstone Arsenal every day until 2014, when Li was struck by a vehicle while crossing the street at the UAH campus. This accident unfortunately had lasting effects on their family. His father, Li's husband, suffered a heart attack at the moment he saw his wife of 46 years being thrown from the impact, and he would pass away a year later in 2015. For Li, this accident caused permanent brain damage that resulted in Alzheimer's disease shortly after. Li lived with George, who took care of his mom for the last 6 years of her life before she passed away in 2021. Bless him. These years were difficult for George. Watching a loved one suffer from Alzheimer's is always a horrendous thing. Add on to that, he knew intimately how smart she was before the disease ran its course, and how much her intelligence meant to her. Yeah, that's truly a tragedy, but I mean, like I was saying earlier, you guys, if that's what they intended to do, then they didn't need to expire her. They debilitated her, so she wouldn't even be able to talk or speak, and her intelligence was wrecked, eh? That's terrible. But I'm not saying that's true. But if that was something that was intended for, well, then that car hit, you know, was probably it. That if there was a conspiracy that they did something against her, it was probably that. But I'm not saying, I'm not trying to start another one. That was just something that crossed my mind. Like, I don't think you're even allowed to go that fast on a university campus, yeah? And to hit her and she flew through the air, it says? Just makes me wonder, right? But I apologize because what I'm trying to do is get rid of the rumors, right? So I apologize for that. Um, like I said, it was just something that I was personally thinking about. Okay. Ran its course and how much her intelligence meant to her. For 6 years, people asked how I could do that for 6 whole years, George said. I said, first of all, she's my mother. Second of all, she gave us a better life. Without her, I wouldn't have been able to come to the United States and get my education. Third, I just really admired her as a person. George found comfort in his religion and his church community from the Chinese Christian Church of Madison during these times. He recalled how he could always tell when his mom was uncomfortable, even when she couldn't talk. When the Buddhism inspired music he was playing didn't succeed at comforting her, it was it was a member of his church who suggested playing Christian hymns, and according to George, he noticed the difference right away. Like I said before, she probably felt, again, my commentary here, she probably felt very betrayed by her homeland, you know? After, it was just like she was treated like some type of traitor, never allowed to enter the country. She couldn't go to her mother's funeral. I'm sure she had some feelings about it, you know what I mean? It's really sad. And so, like, in my perspective, maybe at the end of my life, I would probably like to listen to Buddhist hymns and things like that because it's different for me. And I had such a terrible experience with my own people. You know what I'm saying? It has been suggested to me that the reasons why I like other cultures so much is because I've had such a terrible experience with my own. And I can see how, in a way, that does relate to me in a little bit of how that's true. Like, I kind of am drawn to other cultures and other peoples because I had such a bad experience with my own. But it's much more than that. I think it's about, my curiosity and my yearning to learn about everyone and all cultures and peoples, right? So it's more about that, that I feel like all peoples are like a beautiful painting created by the creator, and each canvas is different and can be equally admired and learned about. Anyway, I hope you understand what I mean by that. But I thought that about that when I read that part in the article. It continues on to say, my conversation with George, along with this entire story, is one I'll never forget. I still ask myself to this day, how had such a brilliant and fiercely intelligent woman go largely forgotten in a community such as Huntsville, with its Rocket City identity focusing entirely on innovation and intelligence? How had I never heard any mention of Dr. Li or her story from a Huntsville citizen, even though there were a small handful of video essays about her online, which all amassed over 1 million views? In our first phone call, George had asked me what I had hoped to specifically accomplish in our story about his mom. And though I had no idea at the time, it eventually became more and more apparent the more I was able to see and hear George talk about his mother and see how proud he was to be her science wait, to see how proud he was to be her scientist? Wait, talk about his mother and see how proud he was to be her scientist. I don't know. What George was able to share may not satisfy the swarms of conspiracy theorists. Oh, because he was like a scientist figuring out and helping figure out what happened to her and clearing up some stuff, I guess? I don't know. That didn't make sense to me. Sorry, you guys. What George was able to share might not satisfy the swarms of conspiracy theorists and UFO enthusiasts who will continue to seek out information about his mom's research, but hopefully this story of a son's dedication to his mother can ultimately raise awareness both within the Rocket City and online about Dr. Ning Li's impact on the science community and the story of her life. So I hope you enjoyed that. I know I really did. It just makes me wonder how many other people have taken a story and ran with it to make a quick dollar. And I think it's a real shame because we miss out on learning about brilliant and beautiful women, women of science like Dr. Ning Li, you know, and that the conspiracy part of it will even push people to look into it at all and think that it's complete tomfoolery, nonsense, BS. You know what I'm saying? So it's a true shame, and I hope that by me reading this and putting the sources below for people to view, that we can clear up stuff like this. You know, as I said, I didn't mean to start anything else, but if there was something strange about it, that, you know, I said that they do things like they would hit people with a car, or, you know, we know that they have a heart attack gun and such, yes? Or they unalive people quite often, purposely, and make it look like that they did it to themselves. So I'm just saying that I thought that was pretty strange that she'd be hit on the university campus at such a speed that she went flying through the air. You know what I mean? I don't know, like, if it really takes all that quick, or how the speed limit was. Were they going over there? There's so many questions, right? But like I said, I don't want to create another conspiracy about it, but I can't say that there isn't, you know, some strangeness about the whole thing. I know people get hit by cars every day, but you know, she was depressed and all of this, and it just made me wonder. That's all. So forgive me, because I don't mean to insinuate anything or again start any other rumors. But for people that are convinced that maybe she was, you know, taken out on purpose, she could have been. You know, it's not impossible. And if she was a threat to go out and say anything, or even if she insinuated, well, I'm going to tell everybody anyway, even if she may have even mentioned it, you know, if she was coming home with her makeup messed up, like I said, to say that maybe she was crying at work, maybe they threatened her and upset her and scared her. Who the hell knows, you guys? We won't know. We just won't know. And it's a shame that we can't further take a look at her research, but we definitely know who did. You know what I'm saying? The Department of Defense and, you know, the secret black projects and the private sector and all that. They definitely did and kept it all to themselves. So, anyway, it's a true shame. And we can only imagine the gifts and incredible things that could be created with such a technology. But again, they just don't want to let go of the fossil fuels, do they? You know, it's almost like if that's the lifeblood of the earth, they just want to drain it right till it's dry, like a vampire draining its host till it's dead. You know what I'm saying? Unreal. Okay, you guys, today is July 13th. It's Sunday, or July 13th, 2025. It's a Sunday, so I hope you enjoyed your weekend, and I really hope you enjoy this episode on Last Minute Lacey. Thank you so much for watching. If you could like, comment, and subscribe and all that, I would greatly appreciate it. My content doesn't seem to be getting around as much, and it's kind of a disappointment. But, you know, it is what it is, and I appreciate all your support and your help. And I thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good day. Bye. Oh, I may add in a little bit on the end because I pre-recorded something. It's kind of like a summary about Dr. Li's research and stuff, but I don't call her doctor. I call her Ning Li, and I apologize for that because I recorded it quite late. but I don't exactly want it to go to waste for, people jotting down notes and research purposes and such, okay? All right, so that's going to be after this, and that'll be the end of the video there. Okay, again, take care, everybody. Bye! Physicist and anti-gravity scientist Ning Li. Ning Li was a Chinese-American scientist born in Shandong. She graduated from the Department of Physics of Peking University, and in 1983 she immigrated with her family from China to the United States. She is known for her physics and anti-gravity research. In the 1990s, Li worked as a research scientist at the Center for Space Plasma and Aeronomic Research at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. Between 1991 and 1993, Li co-authored several papers with Douglas Torr outlining a practical method for generating anti-gravity effects. In 1997, she referenced experiments that suggested anomalous weight changes in objects above rotating superconductors, although her own experiments showed minimal gravitational effects. In 1999, Li founded AC Gravity, LLC, to continue her research. The company received a Department of Defense grant of $448,970 in 2001, but no public reports were reported. Li's research gained attention in both scientific and popular media, with claims of functional anti-gravity devices. However, her later years were marked by personal tragedy and health issues, including a serious accident in 2014 that led to her declining health. Ning Li passed away on July 27, 2021, leaving behind a legacy of innovative research in a field that remains largely theoretical. Her theoretical framework of a gravitomagnetic field. Li proposed that rotating ions could create a gravomagnetic field, which is perpendicular to their spin axis. This could potentially lead to anti-gravity effects. She theorized that aligning a large number of ions in a Bose-Einstein condensate could produce a strong repulsive force, effectively neutralizing gravity, thus anti-gravity. Okay, so I have a little bit to read here from a website, because initially there was a rumor or a conspiracy going around about Ning Li that she disappeared or that she was kidnapped by the Chinese government, or all these different things going around the internet. And there was an article written in 2023, July 30th, 2023, by Noah Logan. It's called Uncovering the Mystery of Huntsville's Brilliant Anti-Gravity Scientist. And if you read this, it's very interesting. This journalist goes to find her son, who's named George. And in one part it says, George also explained he noticed the change in his mom after leaving the University of Huntsville for the private sector. So he says all the secrecy that comes with the job began to change her demeanor and behavior over the years. So he asks her once. He recalled, I said, Mom, do you need to tell me something? She told me, first off, you don't know anything. Second off, if you even think you might know something, you forget about it. I said, okay, that's fine. Because it says, George informed me that while no one called his phone before, I wasn't the first person to contact him on the topic. He has received various letters from people in New Zealand, amongst other places, hoping to learn more about Dr. Li's research. He can't help but laugh when he recalls one time he asked his mom about her work. So, she said, you don't know anything about it, and even if you think you do, you forget about it. And, she probably had a document or an NDA, non-disclosure agreement or whatever, that says, she can't talk about it. So most importantly, Dr. Li never left the Department of Defense and never left the country to work for the Chinese government. So I just think it's interesting that some things get really blown out of proportion. For Li, the accident she had caused permanent brain damage that resulted in Alzheimer's disease shortly after. Li lived with George, her son, who took care of his mom for the last 6 years of her life before she passed away in 2021. So I tried to find some of her papers and couldn't. So in 2014, Ning Li was struck by a vehicle while crossing the street at the university campus. This accident unfortunately had lasting effect on their family. So Li's husband suffered a heart attack at the moment he saw his wife of 46 years being thrown from the impact. He would pass away a year later in 2015. So George lost both of his parents in a short period of time. The journalist says, I have filed requests through the Freedom of Information Act for the results of her 2001 grant, along with any other research from her, but it was denied, along with requests from others. It's safe to assume that we won't be finding out the specifics of her research. So I hope you found that interesting. I will have a bunch of links and information below about the topic. These are the types of people, though. It says that the most clever people in the world go to work for the private sectors and stuff like this. And so, she was doing some really good work and then got money to continue the work to try to get some physical results. And it reminded me of the story that I read the other day from Reddit about I work at NASA, and we made contact yesterday. That story there, someone like Ning Li would be in this type of work. You see what I'm saying? And they wouldn't be able to talk about it. So that's kind of just an example of that, because afterwards, there's a very, very high level of secrecy, as we know. Okay, everyone, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care, and I will talk to you soon with another topic. Bye!